Hey everybody, it's Jake from the Paws podcast. The host Kevin's not with me; he's finishing up his article and whatnot. You guys know by now what has happened. FIU has lost to Monmouth. Let me make sure I go live for my Instagram peeps. There we go. FIU football just lost to Monmouth, an FCS school, by a score of 45-42. Beg your pardon. Let me make sure everything's good to go on all socials. Just to make sure I get this right. Usually Kevin handles this stuff, So, all right, we're good. So, it sucks. I mean, first things first, this sucks. So this is, I feel like I say this every season. This is one of the worst losses I've seen in a very long time. Because of the specifications of what just happened, of what we all just saw. The loss last week against FAU was bad, right? But to lose at home on your homecoming, nonetheless, against an FCS, granted a good FCS team, but an FCS team nonetheless, and to lose the way they did puts a real damper on the rest of the season. And I know FIU, all the FIU fans, Barstool, SSN, they're all going crazy in Twitter or X right now. And for once, I can't blame them. I mean, is it time to panic? I would say yes. I would have told you last week that if they lost to Monmouth, it would be time to panic. I thought that as bad as the FAU game was this season was still very salvageable. And there is a small chance that it is still salvageable to an extent. Because, I mean, technically speaking, they're playing some not great Conference USA teams for the rest of the season, like UTEP's, Jack State, and who else am I thinking of that hasn't had a great start to the season? UTEP, Jack State, and Kennesaw. There is a slight chance that they could get to that 6-win mark. I'll answer your question in a sec, Tuan. Thanks for hopping in. There is a chance that they could do just enough to get into a bowl game. But I think that if they don't get into a bowl game, there's going to be some likely, maybe not, maybe some changes to be made with this team. I know the fans on social media, on Twitter. Twitter's a rough place when after your college team loses or any sports team loses. It just devolves into either critical talk or just hell. What the fans do, but I know they're already talking about some jobs, and I'm not going to get into that in this post game. Maybe some other time, maybe after the season when all's said and done, because still a very long season to go. We have 8 games to go, including a game next week against La Tech. I do want to say shout out to the crowd. The amount of students that showed up prior to the game was absolutely insane. That was one of the biggest crowds, no joke, I've seen of just partying. All the frats were there, a lot of clubs. Anyway, Tuan asked thoughts on the coach. We heard from Coach McIntyre following the game. He seemed somewhat upbeat despite the absolutely terrible circumstances of this game. And like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, it's going to be weird on what things could look like when this season comes to a close, because there's still so much of this season left to be decided. To determine so much about one game in a season is tough and usually doesn't always say what is correct and what isn't off of one game. For all we know, FIU could go undefeated and then make it to a bowl game, and then we're all happy and everything's good. I did just notice that we might be lagging a bit on Instagram. I apologize for that, but we'll march forward. I don't have any thoughts that I can really share right now, Tuan, because there's still 8 games to go in the season. But all I can say is that this was an absolutely abysmal loss for the Panthers. It's a loss that should have never happened. It's a loss that nobody predicted. Either us, Kevin and I, or I know the Conference USA podcast roundtable, we were all on FIU. It's a loss that should have never happened, and a lot of questions are going to have to be answered. And until they are, there's going to be a lot of talk on social media that's negative towards not just the coach, but the rest of the team for that matter. And do I think it's deserved? Some parts of it, yes. The defense tonight for FIU was absolutely abysmal. Let's just keep it real here. Let me just pull up the statistics. The stat broadcast statistics might not be exactly 100% true. I don't know. But Robertson, the Monmouth's quarterback, went 35 for 51, 361 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. The interception was caught by Travion Barnes and went all the way back for a pick 6 at the beginning of the game. I want to get the total. Here we go. Comparison. Monmouth. Granted, they have a good offense. We talked about that in the pregame show. Monmouth, an FCS school, walked into Pitbull Stadium on FIU's homecoming day and dropped 540 total yards. 540 total yards. 361 passing, 179 rushing, both of which were better than FIU. 24 first downs. Where did it go? They went 5 for 7 on 4th down. Granted, Mike talked about a lot of the 4th downs were 4th and 1, 4th and short. They're not exactly plays that you can make that often, but I'd like to sit here and just be sad and whatnot. I just don't have the energy to be completely just disappointed or depressed or even angry about this game because, again, I said this a bunch. I know I'm repeating myself. I'm sorry, but there's still 8 games to go in this season. Anything can change. It can go for the better or it could go for the worse. But yeah, the defense was bad. There was just no other way of putting it. Some specific players had some solid performances today. Let me pull up the stats here if I can. Defense for FIU: Travion Barnes, 9 total tackles, 6 solo, led the team, a tackle for a loss of pick. This is the second straight game that JoJo Evans was ejected in the first half, which sucks. JoJo Evans is an amazing player. He's had a great start to the season. And the fact that he keeps getting ejected for targeting is not only bad for him, but it hurts the rest of the team just because of the talent this man has. And I'm rooting for him. I want him to get better, and I want him to stop making these mistakes because I think he's a wonderful player, regardless. Let's get back into talking about stats here. I think FIU's offense was overall good. If you drop 42 points in a football game against an FCS school, you should win that game, unless it's who am I thinking of? North Dakota State or Montana State or some of the better teams in the Big Sky Conference that we all know about. Unless it's against them. This is against a Northeastern FCS squad who has never beaten an FBS team before in the, 32 years of existence. They've never beaten an FCS team until now. I think the offense looked good. Kewan Jenkins broke his single-game passing record. 362 total yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 22 for 31. He had a great game. He had a great game, and it was wasted on a loss against an FCS team. So, say la vie. Receiving-wise, everyone did pretty good. Eric Rivers, by the way, back-to-back games with over 100 receiving yards. He's having a phenomenal season so far. It's still kind of a mystery who's going to be that wide receiver 1 position if they even go to one, which they might not. I know Kevin's been talking about that a lot. They might just not go for a wide receiver 1 kind of type offensive system or an offensive system that requires a wide receiver 1, and that's fine. But Eric Rivers has looked great nonetheless. 5 catches, 101 yards. Dean Patterson and Juju Lewis caught touchdowns. Rushing wise, as another disappointing game, FIU's rushing attack did not look good against FAU, and it did not look good here against Monmouth. Keyshawn Owens still led the way, 11 carries, 58 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dean Patterson had the other touchdown as a rusher, which is kind of funny. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of players that you could specifically blame, and that's perfectly fine. I can't blame the offense in general because they did really, really good. So I don't know what to tell you. Again, connection's not doing good on Instagram. I apologize. There's nothing I can really do about that right now. So shoot. But I mean, you can rewatch this on YouTube or Twitter if you want. I mean, all credit to Monmouth. They played very inspired football today, and at some points in the game, they looked like the outright better team. Monmouth is definitely a very good FCS squad. We talked about that in the pregame show. We spoke with Steve Adelson of Asbury Park Press, who had mentioned the success that their offense has had, and they got a great system over there in Monmouth. So kudos to them. They played a great game, and they beat FIU fair and square. I do want to talk about that final drive, the fumble that the fumble heard around the world that cost FIU pretty much the win. It was on the 1 yard line. And I apologize here, the player in question who fumbled, I don't exactly remember the player that fumbled the ball. At least not at the top of my head. If one of you guys in the chat could remind me who fumbled the ball at the end there on Instagram or Twitter or YouTube, I'd appreciate it. I can't remember all of a sudden. But I understand the motivation to go into the end zone and try to score. You're at the 1 yard line. You certainly don't want to avoid going to overtime because anything can happen in overtime. And if he gets that extra effort or maybe a push in from another FIU Panther, then maybe there's a chance they score the touchdown. But if he was struggling that much to get an extra inch or two to get close to the end zone, would taking a knee have not been fine in that scenario? I believe it would have easily been a first down, so the clock would have stopped. Time was not an issue. FIU had timeouts to spare. It would have been first and goal on the 1 yard line, and FIU could have done literally whatever they wanted to on the next ensuing play or plays. Granted, it shouldn't have come down to that. Kevin and I were in agreement that we should have had a thorough win, a thorough beatdown even, against Monmouth, and that has not happened, but things happen, and we ended up in this situation. Would taking a knee or just, I don't know, falling down, sliding down, whatever, would have dropping down at that point at the 1 yard line, maybe even inch line, and putting the FIU offense first and goal at the 1 with more than enough time and 2 timeouts in case things get a little weird. That would have been the best case scenario for them to do. I think it was the Barstool account that talked about they should have settled for a field goal, which I completely disagree with. I don't agree with that at all. They were in the premium position to score. And if the player takes a knee, that's perfectly fine. Then you're pretty much almost set up for the win. And just sending a text here real quick. It was an error made by the receiver in question, and FIU lost the game. Not completely because of that, but it was obviously a big part of that, considering the circumstances at the time. So, I mean, it sucks, that it came down to that. It would have been absolutely a legendary finish. Granted, again, it would have been against an FCS team. It would have been an amazing finish, kind of akin to what we saw last year or actually 2 years ago when they barely beat Bryant. That game went into overtime. That was a thriller. But at the end of the day, regardless of if you were to have blown out an FCS team or not, you would have liked that win because you could say, all right, we're 2-2 in conference play, and we're getting ready to take on a not great Louisiana Tech team and then some other not great teams not long after. But now FIU has a 1-3 record in their non-conference schedule. And even if they beat some of the expected teams like Louisiana Tech next week, the winless UTEP Miners, the winless Kennesaw State Owls, and now even the winless Jacksonville. Actually, they're not winless. They beat Southern Miss today. The Jacksonville State Gamecocks. That's still not enough to get into a bowl game. You need 6 wins. So obviously, we're going to be at Pitbull Stadium next week. We're going to obviously make our preview. That'll drop on Friday. We'll probably get the No Tech Please Don't Die podcast on to talk some Bulldogs, see what we need to know about them. But this sucks. I feel, to put into perspective, I feel way worse now than I felt after that FAU game, because we were 1-2 then. Now we're 1-3, and it really stings because that was our non-conference schedule and what I thought was a very favorable non-conference schedule. So to sum up, the offense looked good, the defense looked bad, and Monmouth has beaten an FBS opponent for the first time ever, and it was against us at Pitbull Stadium. So, all right, I think that's it. Your final score: Monmouth 45, FIU 42. We're gonna be back on Friday talking about our Paws Up preview for the Louisiana Tech game. I think they're wearing Biscayne blue in that game, so if you are coming, I guess that's what they probably want you to wear. I think they said that the first 200 students that go to that game get a T-shirt. I'm assuming Biscayne blue colored T-shirt, so that's kind of enticing. Go check that out, and that's it. So again, 45-42, Monmouth wins. Episode 70, by the way, we have not forgotten about episode 70. That's coming maybe soon. We have a guest lined up, and I think it's going to be a really cool one. So, yeah. Until next time, good seeing you guys. Sorry you're getting used to losing. I'm used to it, okay? I was there for 1-11, 0-5 during COVID. By the way, shout out Section 112. We were supposed to go to the Blueprint Collective tailgate party, but the weather kind of messed them up, so we went to the Section 112 tailgate party. I guess you could say. And obviously, those guys are cool as always. Fed us some really tasty hot dogs and just talked some shop for a while before we had to go in. So shout out to you guys. You guys are awesome. Appreciate y'all supporting the channel, and we'll see you guys next week. So. Paws up.